Hmm.
Now, the thing about his British connection is there's no question that Lord William Rees Mogg was, in some sense, his handler, that Rees Mogg endorsed him. Rees Mogg was his publicist. He used his bully pulpit at the Times. He used his uniquely privileged position as a close friend of the British royal family and as a very close friend of Jacob Rothschild. And of course, Lord Rees Mogg had a son whom he named Jacob. I'm guessing he named him after Jacob Rothschild. So he was a very special person. He was a bridge between worlds, I like to call him.
Be really interested to
And
find out if he was named after Jacob Rothschild. Actually, I'll go and look into that. I'll see if I can find anything around. That'd be really
well,
interesting.
his father was both a very close personal friend of Jacob Rothschild and
Mhm.
a very close business partner. So,
What bigger honor? What bigger honor than to name your son? Yeah.
right. So in any case, there's no question that Soros was adopted at the very highest levels of the British establishment in the early 90s and actually before, if you look at some of the details. But it all went public in 1992 with the so-called breaking of the Bank of England. And it was a brilliant psychological operation in the sense that even if to this day, when to this day I suggest to people that Soros is working for the British, the average person or the people who haven't studied this question deeply will say, well, he's the one who broke the Bank of England. I mean, he did a terrible disservice to this country. How could he be working for the British? But he was working for the British elites. He wasn't working for the British people. And he was serving their interests. And for them, if the average British working person or middle class person lost 20% of his net worth as a result of this devaluation, what is that to them? Because they achieved their goal. I think the relationship between Soros, between Lord Rees Mogg, and between Jacob Rothschild and the whole sort of gang of City of London investors that revolves around the St. James Place Capital Group. Uh, it's very, very clear that these were the people who were behind Soros in the early 90s when all these events took place. So everything, you could say it's circumstantial evidence, but it's a whole lot of circumstantial evidence that
Mhm.
really points to his being a British asset rather than an American one. And I think it's very significant, too, that as his career progressed, when he famously went after George Bush in the 2004 election, he didn't just go after Bush as a candidate. He went after the United States. He basically said that the U.S. had become a rogue state and had to be taken down.
Mhm.
And so again, he became very publicly.
Do you wonder if that's like him being made into the antithesis of whatever they want to create on the other side so that they can argue against him? Oh, look, this is this left-wing liberal rich man, and we're the ones who are coming to save you. Could there be an element of that to it?
On whose part do you mean?
Like, I mean, a lot of the time the establishment likes to create the heroes and villains. So in that case, he's a villain to the American people. It's got to, in my opinion, be for a reason that he takes that stance. It's either for his own reason that is self-indulgent hubris, or his own connections, or maybe the British, giving a warning to the Americans via one of their many assets. But it could also be that he's playing part of a character in the game, maybe.
Well, yes, I think that absolutely. I think that's exactly what he's doing. I believe, in fact, that Soros is not so much, uh, he's less of a financier and more of a propagandist. I think his actual role
Oh, yes.
is to go before the cameras and play the part of sort of a James Bond villain. And that's where we get this whole idea that was promoted in that New Yorker article back in 1995 that he is somehow unaffiliated with any um, nation or government. It's that he's a James Bond villain. He's only in it for himself. I think he is put in that position so that to enable him to take the blame for many operations that are conducted by sovereign governments.
That
So
sounds a bit like maybe a little elements of Klaus Schwab gets the same treatment as well.
Yes, absolutely. I believe Klaus Schwab is exactly the same sort of creature as George Soros, and plays exactly the same sort of role, where he plays a James Bond villain who seemingly came out of nowhere, has no power structure behind him, but for some mysterious reason, every government in the world kowtows to him. And the thing, too, another suggestion that Soros is a British operative as opposed to an American one, and those are the only really two possibilities there are. He's either working for the UK or the US. He's not working for anybody else. But another indication now is Soros has for a long time been advocating the elimination of the U.S. dollar as the global currency, and he started agitating for that back in 1987, and saying that we had to go to another currency system. So when he did that, he was clearly taking an anti-American position. And then, beginning in the early 2000s, certain figures in the UK started taking that position as well. So that now all of a sudden, we have this BRICS situation. We have the UK semi-officially, or maybe it's even officially at this point, getting behind the agenda of de-dollarization, of moving off the dollar standard and creating some new currency order with the so-called BRICS nations. And so this is clearly a UK agenda, which the UK is pursuing for reasons of their own, which are not yet clear to me. But it was a Soros agenda going back at least to 1987. He wrote about it in his book, The Alchemy of Finance. And so you see this on one issue after the other with Soros. It's another bit of evidence. It's not absolute proof, but it's another bit of evidence as to why I would say he's a UK asset as opposed to a US asset. And he's got to be one or the other. He can only be one or the other, because he is working at the apex of the free world power structure. And the apex of the free world power structure is the Anglo-American alliance. And everybody else is secondary. And so is he on the Anglo side or the American side? And I say he is consistently on the Anglo side, according to my analysis. Can I definitively prove that? No, I can't. But it just appears to be the case, and I made that case in my article, how the British invented George Soros, and so that's my story, and I'm sticking with it.